Good morning. Today's question is, how do angels and demons affect people's lives today? This is a very involved question because we could have video upon video for how to answer this question. So we'll see kind of how far we get here in today's video. And there's more to say about spiritual warfare as well, beyond just how angels and demons affect people's lives today. I've had other questions come in about even what's the nature of our role in spiritual warfare and things like that. But for now, let's just talk about how angels and demons affect people's lives today. So Ephesians 6:11 through 12, put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. So the first thing we want to say is what's obvious from this verse. There's a lot more going on than meets the eye. There's an intersection of worlds that takes place, and Ephesians is keen to this idea. But when we look around us, we see material, we see bodies, we see chairs, we see bookshelves, and we see nature and life like in this biological, atmospheric world. But it's material. But there's more than matter here. There's more going on. My soul, for example, is more than matter, so is yours. But even beyond that, there are spiritual realities that are taking place in another dimension of existence that is immaterial, and the Bible makes this very clear. And sometimes what happens when you see an angelic display or a visionary display, or even a demonic display, it's that you sort of might be seeing almost the pulling apart into another dimension. You're seeing a window into another world, as it were. So therefore, as we think about this, just note that there's a lot more going on than meets the eye. Now, I want to give a couple of cautions, two directions. Number one is sometimes we can not go far enough in thinking about the reality of angels and demons and how they affect people's lives today. So we can be naturalists in not going far enough. We can neglect texts like, hey, some of you have entertained angels unaware. That's Hebrews 13. We can think that the angelic and the demonic never really come into our lives, and we're largely living naturalist kind of lives. And I think quite often this is often how we live our lives. We live it largely by planning. We live it largely by natural means. We live it largely not thinking about supernatural things. So we cannot go far enough. We can be out of tune, for example, with how demons use our flesh like judo wrestlers, where you take the momentum of the person and flip them over. It's kind of what happens sometimes with spiritual warfare. We're unaware that our flesh is leaning a direction, but it's as though the demonic takes it and pushes it even further. The devil plays and preys upon our weaknesses. He exacerbates those things within us at times. Like, example of this biblically might be Peter. Like, you see Peter where he has these natural propensities, right, to open his mouth. He has these natural things where he sort of rushes in different ways. And then at one point, Jesus, as Peter opens his mouth, says, "Get behind me, Satan." He'll identify like that there's more at work here than meets the eye. Satan's desire to sift you like wheat, Peter. He's at work in your life. And you need to recognize here that there's more going on than just your flesh. So that's important to know. So sometimes you don't go far enough. But secondly, sometimes we go too far. And what I mean is, I've met people who are looking for demons under every bush. And here's how this happens. The one is they blame everything almost exclusively, or everything primarily, on demons. You lost your job, and so the devil's after you. Maybe you weren't a good employee. Maybe relationally you're hard to get along with. Maybe you actually need to do introspection about how you're happening to life in your personality or with your relationships or with your consistency or how you're communicating. And it's easy sometimes to create what I call celestial scapegoats. The problem here in our relationship is just the devil. He's just after us. And you kick it off to the devil instead of taking on the moral responsibility for personal reformation. You're creating a celestial scapegoat. A second way that you go too far sometimes is you name spirits. I hear people do this all the time. There's a spirit of lust. There's a spirit of greed. We have a spirit of division and a spirit of this and a spirit of that. There aren't places in the Bible where spirits are named like that. There are kinds of demons. There are kinds that only come out by prayer and fasting. There are demons that are chained and not chained. There are those kinds of things. You get the language of a spirit or a disposition, maybe even a demonic entity of Antichrist, one that is speaking out against Christ. But it doesn't mean that this demon is a lustful demon and that's all it does and all it operates, and we need to excise this demon that is equal to that. That can also become close to a celestial scapegoat. Now, do demons exacerbate to lust? Yes. Do demons tempt to greed? Yes. But my point is just that there isn't a demon named lust and a demon named greed and a demon named division. It's that demons do those kinds of things. And third, we can go too far sometimes in grandstanding, people acting as though they're almost like demon tamers. They're like the middle of the celestial circus, and they're the ones who are commanding all of the spiritual forces, and they're out over their pay grade at that point. So once that stuff starts to happen, it can become a kind of a dangerous thing. So what we have to do now is walk in a kind of measure. We have to recognize that as it relates to spiritual forces, our wrestling really is against them. But we also have to be careful that we go far enough, we recognize a lot going on, a lot more than meets the eye, and a lot more than we're naturally predisposed to. And we have to make sure, though, that we recognize that we're players in this, and we can't go too far and start creating celestial scapegoats and blaming everything in that way solely or primarily upon demons and not taking personal responsibility or beginning to sort of name demonic entities specifically for everything. And again, that doesn't mean that there aren't specifically demons behind things, but it does mean that there's usually some correspondence to demons behind things and our involvement with them. We're going to stop there for this video because we're going to continue in a future video and talk a little bit more about how, and get in a little bit more to how demons in particular affect people's lives today. Take care, and I hope this maybe whets your appetite for our next video.